And tonight we are looking at the Algarve. Now, what we show you will not necessarily coincide with the brochure's view of things. They won't always tell you, for instance, in June the sea is rather cold, or that a resort is not suitable for the elderly, or that there's so much building going on it's the last place to go for peace and quiet. We, however, will. Now, where is the Algarve? Well, it's the southern province of Portugal on the Atlantic coast. The provincial capital is Faro, and the biggest resort is Albufeira. But it's fair to say that the whole of the coast, from near the Spanish border to Lagos, a distance of about 80 miles, is geared to tourists. Your first sight of the Algarve will be Faro Airport. It is considered to be a safe airport. The air traffic controllers are not prone to strikes and speak very good English. Faro is a very popular destination for charter flights. You can fly from most UK airports, and the flight time is about 3 hours. It's estimated that the number of British tourists visiting the Algarve this year will be over 800,000. After passing through customs, you are likely to be presented with a flower. This will be your first invitation to visit a timeshare development. We'll have more about that later. In the arrivals hall, there are plenty of desks open for car hire agencies, in case you are not on a package tour. Many holidaymakers go to the Algarve on flight-only tickets. Leaving the terminal, if you get lost in the crush, they've built a meeting point, a focal point, which can hardly be missed. Virtually the whole of the Algarve shore is sandy. It's fine golden sand, it's lovely stuff. So you'll find that the beaches are comfortable to lie on and you won't need flip-flops to walk down to the sea. Incidentally, most of the film you will see tonight was shot in late June, so if you're thinking of going in August, expect it to be busier, in May or September, possibly quieter. But let's look at all the major resorts in detail, starting in the east, in Monte Gordo. The beach is about 2 miles long. It's straight and wide, and the sand is golden, typical of the Algarve. The sea is clean, though in places there are patches of seaweed. Near the town centre, there are rows of parasols for hire. There are also sunbeds. At the back of the beach, there are occasional beach bars, although the general impression is one of emptiness. The central beach area is dominated by the casino, the focus for nightlife in Monte Gordo. In fact, there's little else in the way of bars or discos. It is definitely a quieter resort. Quiet, that is, apart from the sound of bulldozers and cranes, because Monte Gordo is what is called a developing resort, and there's a lot of building work going on at the moment. Being close to the Spanish border, it's a good spot for trips to Spain, but it's not close to any other resort on the Algarve. It would appeal most to people who would like a quieter sort of holiday. Monte Gordo's plus point is the quiet beach, but there's not much else there. Faro, the provincial capital, is not a resort, but to the west is Quarteira. Quarteira is what is called in the brochures an up-and-coming resort, which seems to mean that many of the hotels and apartments are half up and still coming. There is a massive amount of building work going on. Virtually every street is either being dug up or built on. The building work inevitably produces a lot of dust, which gets everywhere. It also gives the resort a decidedly unfinished feel. The main attraction is the long sandy beach, broken up at intervals by jetties. Built to stop sand erosion, they give the beaches a more cosy feel. The sand itself is fine and golden. There is a long promenade of hotels, shops and bars, and this is the main area for nightlife. Many of the bars are aimed specifically at the British holidaymaker. Quarteira is a lively resort, but the town itself is like a building site. Virtually next door is Vilamoura. Vilamoura is described as the most comprehensive urbanisation ever planned and carried out in Portugal. It is basically a designer resort, planned down to the last detail. It's all brand new. The cinema, the casino, even the bingo hall, not to mention the designer church, a sort of Milton Keynes by the sea. It is, however, very well signposted. There are ample sporting facilities, including 2 golf courses. But as a resort, it's not due to be finished for some years yet, a fact confirmed by the signs advertising future goodies. Vilamoura is an amazing mixture of architectural styles, from this 5-star hotel to the pseudo-old village-type villas to the just plain odd. The resort's pride and glory is a brand new marina for 800 yachts. Around it are a number of swish-looking bars and restaurants with some surprisingly English names. There are 2 beaches in Vilamoura, the Praia da Marina, which is directly in front of the Marina Hotel. And across a man-made inlet is the much larger Praia de Falésia. It is a very well-organised beach, with sunshades, toilets, and even some high-tech ice cream huts, and plenty of golden sand. Vilamoura has a lot of style, but they've not succeeded in giving it much Portuguese character. Further along the coast is Albufeira. Albufeira is the largest resort on the Algarve. The newer districts surround an attractive and largely pedestrianised old town. There are 3 beaches, one of which is reached directly from the old town through a tunnel. This central beach is large and sandy, with ample facilities, although it is also the most crowded. All the beaches are backed by cliffs, which add to the general attractiveness. Hotels and apartments are dotted along the cliff tops. Albufeira is a very popular resort with the British. We make up a sizable proportion of all the foreign tourists here, and about 3/4 of the British go self-catering. Luckily for them, Albufeira is an excellent centre for shopping. There's a fruit and vegetable market every day. On a Sunday, and every other Tuesday, there's a bigger market selling clothes and jewellery. In the older parts of Albufeira, the fishermen still tend their nets on the beach, and their catch is sold at the market every morning. But inevitably, the old parts are being engulfed by the new, and it's impossible to ignore the amount of building going on in Albufeira. Most of these newer developments, hotels and apartments, are some distance away from the beach. Many holidaymakers coming to these complexes are likely to find they'll need a taxi to get to and from the sea. There's lots to do in Albufeira, but many apartments are a long way from the beach. A few miles west is Armação de Pera. This is a small resort with a very peaceful air to it. The beach is wide, sweeping around the bay with a backdrop of reddish sandstone cliffs. Most Britons staying here are on self-catering holidays. There aren't many shops, nor is there much in the way of nightlife. The promenade is quiet, and there are plenty of small gardens where you can relax in the shade. The plus point about Armação is that it's very quiet, but you won't find much nightlife. A bit further west is Praia da Rocha. Praia da Rocha, or Beach of the Rocks, is about a mile from the town of Portimão. To the east, the beach is backed by steep cliffs, eroded into unusual rock formations. The shore is reached down a series of steps, some very steep. It's not a resort for the elderly or the unfit. The beach is very clean and extremely attractive, and doesn't get too crowded. There are occasional beach bars, just as well, given that climb. Further west, towards the centre of the resort, the cliffs become less steep, and the beach gets a little more crowded and generally organised. The town centre has bars, cafes and shops running along the promenade. For a greater selection, Portimão is within walking distance. Around the edge of the town, though, there is the inevitable development taking place. Praia da Rocha is in a very beautiful setting, but the many steps mean that you need to be reasonably fit. The main resort in the west is Lagos. Lagos is an old and attractive town. Unlike most resorts on the Algarve, it has a life beyond tourism. It's a real working community. The harbour is still used, mainly by the local fishermen. And the old city walls reinforce that feeling of tradition that is rare elsewhere on the Algarve coast. In the narrow streets and squares, there are numerous bars and cafes, popular with the locals and tourists alike. Lagos has a busy feeling to it, and though there are plenty of places aimed directly at the holidaymaker, you never get the impression that tourism has taken over. Certainly, there is no feeling of a resort still being built. Because it's a working town, it has a much wider range of shops than you will find in other resorts. There are hotels in Lagos town itself, but the large ones used by the tour operators are on the outskirts, near the sea. The coastline here is cliffs and coves, often small, and to get to and from the beach usually entails quite a climb. The larger Praia da Mosh is about a mile from Lagos. It's a long sandy beach and rarely gets too crowded, apart from weekends. Lagos is a town full of character, but the beaches are outside the town. The coast to the west of Lagos is not developed for tourism, and the land is rather barren, and that area does not normally appear in the brochures. So, just to sum up the resorts, if you want a family holiday with sandy beaches, then everywhere is suitable. If you want a more active holiday, all the resorts are good for water sports, though windsurfing is not as popular as on the Mediterranean. But the area is famous for its more general sports facilities. Tennis is very popular in Val de Lobo. There's a big Roger Taylor tennis centre there. There are also courts in most other resorts. And these resorts have golf courses, all of which are open to the visitor. But we must stress that the main problem on the Algarve this summer, and it is likely to be the same next year, is the vast amount of building work going on. Apart from Lagos, you will find the dust and the noise difficult to avoid. Now, what of the weather? Well, John Kettley, as usual, is here with all the facts. John, it is very much promoted as an all-year-round resort. Is that the case?
I think it is, Paul. It suits the sporting types because you do get some nice weather even in the winter months, though, of course, you can't necessarily rely upon it. Now, at Faro, for instance, the temperature in the middle of winter is about 15 or 16 degrees, and it peaks at something like 28, which is 82 degrees Fahrenheit, during the summer months of the year. Now, that may not seem particularly hot, but if we compare it with Birmingham, for instance, where the beaches aren't too good, and you don't have the maritime influence, well, the temperature in the middle of winter in Birmingham is several degrees below what it would be in Faro, and even in the summer, when you can get some decent weather, the average temperature there is only something like 20 degrees. Now, as regards the sunshine totals, well, you can get anything from 6 to 12 hours during the course of the year over at Faro, 6 in the winter months and 12 in the middle of summer.
Now, presumably they have a rainy season at some stage. When does that start?
It's really in the winter months, Paul. It's typical of the Mediterranean, though it's not strictly in the Mediterranean. But during the summer months, you get virtually no rain days at all, just the odd thunderstorm. But during the winter, something like 8 or 9 rainy days. Of course, you could be lucky and not see very many rainy days at all if you went across for a week. But that's when you've got to expect some of that rain anyway.
Now, are those figures true for the whole of the Algarve district?
There is a significant change as you go well west along the Algarve, as you get more of an Atlantic influence. So if we take the situation for Sagres, for instance, you get about 1 hour of sunshine less per day over in Sagres. The rainfall is significant too, because you get 2 extra rain days per month. And considering the rainfall total for the year is about the same as Faro, then that seems to imply that the rainfall in Faro is very much heavier. Now, the temperatures are very much cooler in the west of the Algarve, something like 6 degrees below those of Faro in midsummer. So that's virtually the same temperature as Birmingham, in actual fact.
Now, very important when you're on holiday, sea temperatures. Tell us about those.
Yes, they're not desperately warm. Again, it's the Atlantic influence that's the main problem. And they go from about 13.5, 14 degrees during the winter months, not too warm at all, rising to about 20 or 21. I must say I was there one April, and I got as far as putting a big toe in the water. That's all I could manage. If we compare that with Corfu, for instance, where we were dealing with last week, the temperatures in Corfu are something like 5 degrees warmer, so there is quite a difference there.
Now, when you're on the beach, even if there's the slightest breeze, it can feel a lot cooler, can't it? Is it a windy part of the world?
Not particularly during the summer months, and in fact, if you had a nice breeze in the summer months, it would probably be quite refreshing. It would be a nice sea breeze just to cool you down a bit. The strongest winds do occur when you get depressions forming off Iberia during the long winter season. Then you get quite a strong south to southwesterly wind blowing up through the Straits of Gibraltar. People there know it as the Van der Waal wind, and that can be quite a stormy wind. It can bring some rather squally showers actually to that part of the world.
Now, how long are the days? When does the sun start to set?
Well, it does set earlier than it would do in Britain, of course. We're much further north. So if we take May, for instance, the sunset then is around about 8:21. It's as late as 5 to 9 when you get to the middle of summer, but as you go through towards autumn time into October, say, then sunset then is about 6:30.
And have you discovered any natural hazards to worry us with?
Well, I've been scratching my head, I must admit, but I think even the sea's too cold for the sharks.
Right, thank you, John. Now, money. The currency on the Algarve is Portuguese escudos. There are about 240 to the pound. By the way, you might be confused with the way they write the cost of things. This is typical. The dollar sign is used for escudos, and it comes after the number. Now, banks open at 8:30 in the morning. They take lunch from 11:45 till 1. They close again at 2:45. Most close on Saturday and Sunday, so there tends to be queues on Monday. Hotels will often change money, but you'll almost certainly get a poor rate of exchange. Visa and Access are widely acceptable, and because you don't pay commission, it is often the cheapest way to buy things. If you carry euro checks, you'll find there are plenty of outlets where you can use them. Now, as we said earlier, many of the British who go to the Algarve go self-catering. So what can they expect to pay for their food? Well, a few years ago, Portugal was a very cheap country, but that is no longer the case. In the tourist areas now, you'll find many things are only just a bit cheaper than here. A favourite place to shop is at one of the many fruit and veg markets. Everything is sold by the kilo, but oranges work out at about 30 pence a pound. Tomatoes 15 pence a pound. Cherries 30 pence. And potatoes 8 pence a pound. You'll find markets are well used by the locals. Despite what you may read, fish is not generally cheap. Sardines, however, are good value. They are about 30 pence a pound. In the larger resorts, there are plenty of supermarkets that sell a wide range of goods. Shop hours are 9 till 1, 3 till 7. Shops are normally closed Saturday afternoon and all day Sunday. English papers are on sale a day late. They tend to cost about 3 times as much as at home.
Broadcasting on 90.5 FM stereo, this is Solar Radio. It's time.
If you want more up-to-date news, there are 2 local radio stations based around Albufeira that broadcast world news headlines in English, together with sport and music. There are a couple of local publications in English. The Algarve News, that comes out fortnightly, costs about 20 pence. It's quite good on local news and what's on and so forth. There is a glossy monthly magazine that is called the Algarve magazine. It costs about £1, and as well as the sort of tatler-type photographs in it, it's got useful information on beaches and 1 or 2 ideas for day trips. That's the Algarve magazine. Now, for many people, food is an important part of the holiday. Well, as we saw in the resorts, if you prefer English food, you'll have no problem finding restaurants to cater for you. If, however, you fancy Portuguese, what are you likely to find? One popular snack, especially in the morning, are Portuguese donuts, which are fried on the spot at the open-air stalls. They usually cost about 10p. In the restaurant, the cheapest thing on the menu will probably be sardines. If your idea of sardines is something small and tightly packed in tomato sauce, then think again. Sardines are a staple part of the diet in Portugal and are bought in fresh every morning and barbecued over a charcoal grill. Together with a green salad and a bottle of Vinho Verde, the green wine, so called because of its newness and not its colour, the lot will come to less than £5 a head. The other famous dish in Portugal, and available in most restaurants, is cataplana, named after the dish it is served in. It is made mainly from pork and cockles, but is one of those dishes which varies from restaurant to restaurant and could have almost anything thrown in.
Oh, yeah. Very fidgety.
Absolutely beautiful. Time to enjoy it. That is the most important.
Incidentally, tips are normally 10% and are not automatically added in. A popular way to sample the local drinks is at one of the many roadside wine tasting shops. Here you'll find a vast array of the national drink, port. Ruby is the most popular with the tourists, but they usually stock a good range of vintage ports. There is also Porto Bianco, a dry white port, very popular with Portuguese who drink it as an aperitif. There are many different types of wine available in Portugal. It is the 5th largest wine producer in the world. One of the most famous is Vinho Verde, which is slightly sparkling and costs as little as 70p a bottle. The local firewater is called madronho. It's made from madronho fruit, which are Chinese strawberries, and really is firewater.
Powerful. Very
It
nice.
is firewater.
Nice with, very nice with coffee.
Now, a few basic things that it's worth being aware of if you go to the Algarve. Firstly, beaches. Topless bathing, whilst officially not allowed, is tolerated in most resorts. Some hotels, though, expressly forbid it around the pool area. Complete nude bathing, that is prohibited throughout Portugal. Now, one of the most frequent complaints that we get on the travel show from viewers who've been to the Algarve is about timeshare salesmen and the persistence of their selling techniques. For instance, on the way down to the beach in Albufeira, some people were accosted up to 6 times by different salesmen who wouldn't take no for an answer. These touts are paid on a straight commission basis, so much for every person they persuade to visit the development.
Not interested.
Once there, you will be subjected to a really hard sell with all sorts of encouragements like massive discounts if you sign there and then. Now, in many cases, you have no cooling off period, so once you have signed, you are committed. As regards avoiding the touts, there is no easy answer, at least not according to your letters. If you say you have no money, then they offer to make you a loan. If you say you're about to leave for home, they say they'll pay for a taxi to take you to your hotel, of course, via the development. One technique successfully used by some viewers is to say you are German, so play it German, that seems to put them off. Now, one good thing about the Algarve is that mugging and theft against tourists, that is relatively rare. Now, getting around. Taxis are popular, they're easy to pick out with their green roofs, but beware, they are not metered, so it's best to negotiate a price before you set off. And incidentally, with all the development going on, more and more hotels and apartments are being built well away from the beach. Most resorts don't have an urban bus service, so taxis are used instead, and that can usually mean long waits in the morning and the afternoon. The most popular form of independent transport is the hire car, although they are not cheap. A small car would cost about £20 a day, plus insurance and tax, which is usually half as much again.
All the time in the car when you're driving. Just for the police, if they stop you, you have to show him this form. All right?
You must be at least 23 and have had a full licence for over a year. Normally, when you hire a car in Portugal, you have to show your passport. Petrol is very expensive, about £2.30 a gallon, but there's no shortage of filling stations and many are open on Sundays. Some of the minor roads are in bad condition, but the main coast road is mostly very good. Wearing seatbelts is compulsory in Portugal, and there are signs reminding you on most main roads. If you don't wear one, the motorbike police will fine you on the spot. 2,000 escudos, about £8. A couple of other points. Children under 13 are recommended not to sit in the front seats, and the police are very hot on drunk drivers. They use the breathalyzer, and the fine varies with the amount you've drunk. Now, you've hired a car. Where to go with it? Well, the town of Portimão is popular for a day trip. It's an attractive old town with a wide selection of shops. There's a lively harbour where the local sardine fishermen land their catch each day. Around the water are several restaurants, all vying for the passing trade. A morning's catch is barbecued in the open air, and it's not only sardines on offer, there's prawns and larger fish. All of which can be washed down with a bottle of local wine. The smells are quite delicious. If you're into water parks, there are 3 to choose from on the Algarve. There's Slide and Splash, the big one, and Wet and Wild. The parks all run their own bus services from the nearby resorts, so you don't need a car to get to them. They all cost about £6 for adults, around £4 for children, but once in, all the slides are free and you can stay all day. There's not much to choose between them, though Slide and Splash has the more attractive setting. Another popular day out is to go to Villarreal de San Antonio, the border town. From here you can take the ferry to Spain. It costs 60 pence per person return. Taking a car costs £1.50. Villarreal is built in a very grand style, they say, to impress the Spanish. The town square is tiled to produce a sun ray effect from the centre. Around the square are bars and cafes, popular with the tourists as well as the locals. Villarreal is a good place to pick up bargains, but the shopkeepers do most of their trade not with British holidaymakers, but with Spaniards who come over for the day. The best buys generally on the Algarve include towels. Portugal is famous for the quality of its towels. And pottery. The different styles reflect the different regions of Portugal. There's cork, often made into ornaments, and ceramic tiles. You can buy them singly or as part of a pattern. There's also the ubiquitous cock, the national symbol that appears as various ornaments. Now, what if you don't want all the trappings of tourism? Well, we've sent our own independent traveller, that's Matthew Collins, of course, to get his view of travelling in the Algarve. How did you get on?
Well, I found it a good place for independent travellers because apart from all the cheap hotels and pensions where you can get a single room for about £5 a night or even less, there are also lots of private addresses that you can stay at. And you can get these addresses from either the tourist office in most of the resorts, or people actually come and accost you in the morning at the bus or train station asking if you want to come and stay in their house. And I did actually stay in a Portuguese policeman's house and had a lovely room for only £3 a night.
So no real problem finding anywhere to stay?
Certainly not at this time of year. In the summer, I'm sure it gets crowded, but that's the best time, obviously, to get there really, really early. The other thing, when you're offered private accommodation, you must haggle because you can always get there. You can always get the places a little cheaper, even though sometimes you feel you're ripping them off if you offer them £3 instead of £4.
Now, what about the travelling? How did you get about?
Well, there's a train that runs all the way along the coast, but really, I wouldn't recommend taking that because the trains are actually cheaper than the buses, and as such, are much more unreliable. I mean, twice I took a 2-hour train journey, and both times it was almost 3/4 of an hour late, whereas the buses were much more reliable, although a bit more expensive. However, if you want to get from one place quickly, the best bus to take is the Expresso, and these are slightly more expensive, and you have to buy your ticket in advance rather than on the bus itself.
How far west did you travel?
I went to the most westerly point in Europe, which is Cape St. Vincent, which is just near Sagres, which is a lovely place where there's the old navigational school built by Henry the Navigator, where Vasco da Gama and Magellan, all the Portuguese explorers, set off from. But that was as far west as I went.
Now, the places you went to, of the ones you saw, what did you like the most?
I think I'd have to say that the Isla of Culatra, and this is an island, one of 3 islands just south of Faro, and you can get a ferry all the way over there. And there I found the most beautiful beaches in the Algarve. I mean, lots of guidebooks say they're the most beautiful beaches in Europe, and I certainly thought they were excellent. And whereas nudism is frowned upon in lots of parts of Portugal, there it was almost obligatory because the beaches were so desolate. Nobody bothered wearing trunks or anything. And I swam without any clothes on. You would have had some pictures had there been anyone around to actually take some pictures.
You make it sound a sort of undiscovered part of the Algarve almost.
Well, it is. There are tourists who go there, but they really don't encourage tourism. I mean, there are very few cafes, very few shops. In fact, some of the shops are actually in the cafes, and you have to go to the mainland to get all your provisions and stuff. But you can hire houses. Lots of the more prosperous Portuguese in Faro and in places along the Algarve own holiday homes there. And in the summer, you can hire them for a weekend. And out of season, you can hire them for a week, for a month, for about £100 a month. But you have to find those by word of mouth, either on knocking on the doors or going in bars or just asking around for them.
Sounds like a good place to go. Now, your notional mother, we sent her last week to Corfu with 1 or 2 tips. If you were going to the Algarve, what would you say to us? What about advice not already
All my
included in the
advice
programme?
for the Algarve would be on food, I'm afraid. And firstly, I mean, there's a road that runs along the Algarve, and if you go south of that, that's where all the resorts are, so food is much more expensive. If you go north, you can find food is much cheaper. In little restaurants, I mean, you can get a whole meal for maybe £1.50. Another point, when you're having meals in restaurants, sometimes the menu offer the meals in full portions or half portions, and sometimes if you're feeling not that hungry, it's worth getting a half portion, which is called a semi-dosa. The other thing is seafood. The prices are always marked by the kilogram. For example, a kilogram of prawns was 1,500 escudos. I ordered what I thought was 500 escudos, £2.20 worth of prawns, and then got half a kilo, 500 grams, so I had a very upset stomach for the whole of the following week. And the other thing, sardines are very popular in the Algarve, but the Algarve people recommend that you only eat them during a month that don't have an R in them.
Right, so if there's no R, eat.
Don't
right?
eat the sardines in the month with the R in them, i.e. outside the summer.
Right. Make sure your mother understands that, Matthew.
I will
Thank
do
you very
that.
much.
Thank you.
Now, coming home, what is the airport going to be like? Faro Airport is just outside the town of Faro. There are good checking-in facilities with plenty of check-in desks. There is also an open-air cafe where you can sit after you checked in. Anticipating a big increase in tourism, they're currently building an extra terminal. Once through passport control, there's a large departure lounge area covering 2 floors with several facilities including nursery, bar and souvenir shop. There's also a duty-free shop selling a full range of well-known brand names and local ports and wines. Prices are definitely cheaper than in the local shops. Well, that is our view of the Algarve. As I mentioned last week, we don't have a fact sheet, but we're quite happy to let you have a copy of the full script. Now, it's got all the facts in it, together with a few that we didn't have time for. It is rather bulky, so we have to make a charge, I'm afraid. £1.50 to cover the duplicating, the packing and the postage. If you'd like a copy, then please send a cheque or postal order for £1.50, payable to the BBC to The Travel Show Guide to the Algarve, BBC North West, P.O. Box 27, Manchester M61SJ. That address is also on CFAX page 287 and it's in the Radio Times. Also, we would like to hear from you if you've got any comments on tonight's programme. Now, next week, the Travel Show Guide will be to the Costa del Sol in Spain. We'll leave you with a taste of what it is like. Until next time, good night.